Hello and welcome to Band-in-a-Box 2023 for Windows. In this video we're going to have an in-depth look at all the new features in Band-in-a-Box 2023 for Windows, and we're also going to check out a lot of the new content. First though, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the new RealTracks and other content, a quick look at some of the new features, and then I'll delve into more detail with those new features. We've been busy and added over 70 new features and an amazing collection of new content, including 222 RealTracks and RealDrums, 20 more than we've released in previous versions. There are also new MIDI SuperTracks, including a set that utilizes the new SynthMaster plugin, which is now included with Band-in-a-Box 2023. There are new instrumental studies. We've added more songs with vocals, artist performances, with brand new original songs featuring 50 new artist performance Band-in-a-Box song files with accompanying audio vocal tracks. There are new extra styles packs 14 and 15. And X Pro Styles Pack 4 with 100 brand new styles, great for everyone, but specifically designed to work for our Pro and Mega Pack users, with new RealTracks and RealDrums added as well. Also for our Pro and Mega Pack users, we have Real Combos Booster with 45 new RealTracks and RealDrums and lots of styles to go with them. New Look Ma, More MIDI style sets. Playable RealTracks Set 2 with 404 new sounds which allow you to customize the RealTracks performances with the exact notes you want. Playable RealDrums Set 1 has also been added, so the same playable tracks you've been able to use with RealTracks can now also be used with drums. There are 2 new sets of RealDrum Stems, which allow you to access the individual wave files from each different mic used to record many of our most popular RealDrums. And all playable RealTracks and RealDrums now have audio demos. We have bonus packs with 60 additional new RealTracks, 20 more than we've released in previous versions. So in total, an amazing 282 new RealTracks and RealDrums are available. In addition, there are over 100 new Real styles that use the new RealTracks. These include new jazz, fusion, and funk styles that feature legendary drummer Mike Clark. We have lots of requested blues styles, including new guitar and harmonica with Pat Bergeson. More blues organ soloing with Charles Treadway. Lap Steel with Rob Ickes and Eddie Dunlap. And more blues electric guitar soloing with Nashville great Johnny Highland. We've also expanded our bossa piano soloing with styles using both soloing and left-hand comping. There are also exciting new funky soul horn section styles, great to use with the brand new RealTracks Stems feature that allows you to use the individual voices from the main style. In previous versions, you could use the individual voices but not have them play in sync together as an ensemble. There are new modern funk drums and guitar. And requested Latin pop styles. In the pop, rock, and world category, we've added many requested Southern soul drums, guitar, and bass. There's new gritty rock harmonica with Pat Bergeson. There are also requested prog rock styles, as well as 80s new wave guitars. There are new exciting boogie and gospel piano with Nashville great Kevin McKendry. There are vocal doo-wop styles, which also utilize the new RealTracks Stems feature, allowing you to have the ensemble performance, but with the individual voices that make up the ensemble. There are also requested metal styles featuring new drums, basses, and guitar. And the guitars were all recorded in all 12 keys, meaning Band-in-a-Box does not need to use any pitch shifting on the audio, making for a more consistent tone no matter what chords you enter and no matter what key you're in. And we've also included requested world styles, expanding our collection of sitar, tabla, and dolak. For country, Americana, and Celtic, we've greatly expanded our extremely popular producer explosive country guitar styles with 3 sets of radio-friendly guitars from Nashville legend Brent Mason, designed to be layered into a polished, produced sound. We've also added requested auto harp styles, more contradance piano and guitar, and more indie folk singer-songwriter styles. And even more Johnny Highland with a collection of new country soloists. And there are over 70 new features in Band in a Box 2023. This includes many major new features such as partial track regenerations. By simply typing Ctrl F8, I can instantly regenerate this highlighted region. And if I'm still not happy, I can keep going. And new features ensure it's different every time I regenerate. There's also an Alt F8 on-screen regeneration panel with additional options, which can remain on screen while you continue to select different regions. And this partial regeneration feature also works in the notation window, piano roll window, or any window that allows you to select a region. Playable tracks are enhanced for Playable RealTracks with over 400 added for a total of over 700 playable real tracks. And the Playable Tracks feature also now includes Playable RealDrums, MIDI SuperTracks, and MIDI tracks. There are now RealTracks Stems, which are separate isolated tracks available for multi-track recordings like horns, for example, crooner and blues, vocals, and string quartets. Master track volume automation has been added, perfect for things like crescendos and fade-outs. And we've added audio input monitoring to hear your audio input through your selected track. For example, this slide guitar that I'm playing through my audio interface, and I'm hearing the PG effects from the track. SynthMaster Player Synth is now included with great modern pop and EDM sounds, as well as arpeggiator sounds with chord track features added to Band in a Box to help you use them effectively. And there are lots of other great features, including great new features in the DAW plugins, such as drum stems, color schemes, artist performances and user-created audio loading, and more. So before I delve into the new features, for those of you who may not be familiar with Band in a Box, I'll give you a brief overview of how it works. Band in a Box is an auto accompaniment program that allows you to type in any chord progression in any key, and it generates backing tracks for you. This is an amazing tool for practicing, songwriting, composing, teaching, and music production. And that's what you're hearing right now. Everything you're hearing here was created simply by typing in these chords, picking this style, setting the tempo, and pressing play. Band in a Box then did everything, and you can enter any chord progression in any key. I'll highlight this by making a couple of changes to this chord chart. I'll have just G for the first whole bar. Maybe I'll go to the flat 7 chord and type in F down there. And maybe I'll go C instead of D there. And then maybe here I'll go E minor, and then I'll do the same thing again, maybe G to F, and then to C, and I'll leave the last chord there to D. Maybe then I'll do like 2 full bars of E minor, 2 full bars of A minor, and then the rest I think I'll leave. And I'll change the key of the entire thing, say to C. So I've changed some chords, changed the entire key of the song. I can even change the tempo and make it a little bit faster if I wanted to. And now I'll press generate and play, and we'll hear what it comes up with. So now you can hear that all of the instruments are now playing over this new chord progression, including the soloist. And it still sounds great. So I'm going to use this file right now to explore one of the most exciting new features in Band-in-a-Box 2023, partial regeneration. So with partial track regeneration, you can now regenerate sections of RealTracks by simply highlighting the section and pressing Ctrl F8. This generates a different part each time, so you can keep regenerating to find the best replacement. So I'll demonstrate that with this one right here. Let's just listen from bar 3. So notice the guitar solo that was being played at bar 5. Let's listen again. Now, that sounded like a great little lick to me, but what if we wanted to just change that? Leave everything else the same, but change that bar and change bar 6 as well. I'm just going to press Ctrl F8 right now. Now the other thing too you have to remember is that you have to select the track. So I didn't let Band-in-a-Box know it was the soloist that I wanted to regenerate, so I'm just going to cancel here. Now I'll click on the soloist track here, and now I'll do the same thing. Ctrl F8. So in that case, it left a pause at bar 5, which was musically was a perfectly natural thing to do, and then it came in again here at bar 6. But you can keep doing that repeatedly until you find a part you like, and you're also guaranteed for it to be different every time. So I'll try this again. And I'll try again, Ctrl F8. And that one, I think I quite liked that one. That was really nice. There was a little bit of space at the beginning of bar 5, and then the playing started partway through the bar and led into bar 6, which was great. So I've loaded another song file to show you another example of this, but this time I'm going to do it in the audio edit window. Basically, this feature works in any window where you can select a region. So notation, piano roll, as we saw the chord sheet, and now I'm going to show you it in the audio edit window. So here I have a jazz style playing with a tenor sax solo. So I'm going to highlight this region here. So now you can see the start of it is pretty close to the bar line at bar 21. But the end of my region is part way through bar 23. So I'm going to do the same thing again, just hit Ctrl F8. So completely different part, and that actually sounded great to me. I really like that. And you might have also noticed too, there is a feature that allows it to be written slightly before the bar line if it's grabbing a note, just so it doesn't actually cut off the note in the middle of the note. So that definitely makes it sound a lot more natural. Let me play that again. Alright, so I loaded up one of our new prog rock styles, and I loaded this to show some other ways you can use the partial regeneration. Now with the other couple of examples, I used Ctrl F8 to do like an instant regeneration. right now I'm going to press Alt F8. Now that brings up this dialog here. If you want a more customized approach to regenerating these sections, this is a good way to do it. Basically, the Control F8 that I used in the earlier ones was like being in this dialog and pressing OK Regenerate. Now in those past examples, when I regenerated the parts, it replaced what was there already, which obviously is what I wanted. There was a sax solo for a few bars. I wanted to replace that sax solo with a brand new one. But there are also some options where instead of replacing it, you're basically just adding on to it. So I'm going to go into the options here and we'll have a look at the partial regenerate options. So for starters, we have allow lead in, which means that the riffs may start a little bit before the exact region you selected. That kind of helps the feature be a little bit more musical in that it's going to generate parts that are more coherent. And generate an extra beat is a similar thing, but for the end. Now here, overwrite replace existing. That's what I was talking about. That's what you would want to do in most cases if you're regenerating. But I'm going to remove that check here. Basically what I want to do is, when it goes to the B section in the song here, I'm going to try and thicken up the rhythm guitar. So it's going to generate the same part, but it will be different material. So it will be all of a sudden like two guitars are playing very similar parts instead of one. That's the goal here. So I removed the check from that for that reason. Autoplay is an option, of course. Every time I've pressed Control F8 and done this, it started playback right away so that I could hear it, which is what I wanted. But of course, you can turn that off if you want to. I'll leave it on. And then there are some options for allowing riffs to be the same or different. So if you select this, allow some duplicate riffs, that means that when you're regenerating a part, it's okay if some of the parts will be exactly the same. So this might be an option if you don't mind hearing the same thing again, but maybe in a slightly different context. This one here is to specify just the start. If you just want to make sure the start of the section you're regenerating is different, but you don't mind if the rest then uses some of the same material, that's a good option. But for this in particular, what I'm doing right now, I want to make sure each one is different. So we're not going to get exactly the same material kind of building up on itself. We want to have different parts. So that was already set, so I'll leave it as entire riff is different. So if you're working on a particular part and you want to kind of reset it so that it's just going to pick any riff at that point, even one that it might have played previously. So right now I'm going to press OK. Now here you can enter the values you want here. Like I want it to be bars 9 through 12. But as I pointed out before, this is a floating window, so you can do stuff underneath. So if I highlight this, you can see that that automatically populates these numbers with the correct bars. So now I'm going to regenerate that, and as we saw in the settings, it's going to automatically start playing a bar before this, and we'll hear what this sounds like. Now, I only did it for those 4 bars, and I could really tell then, as soon as it got to bar 13, it didn't sound quite as thick and intense as bars 9 through 12. So I probably would have wanted to do that for the entire thing. So actually, I'm going to press undo here. And of course, all of these regenerations, you're able to undo them all, of course. So that now has gone back to normal, and instead of those 4 bars, I'm going to regenerate 8 bars. So that was perfect. And then the kind of the intensity went down then at bar 17, which is good because it went to an A section, and the drums went from ride and snare to open hat and snare. So that was actually good then, that the guitar got a little less intense at that point. So yeah, that's a very useful feature as well, a different way of using the partial regeneration. All right, so I loaded this soul style and I put this horn section part on it. It's just a very simple repeated rhythmic part. That's what this particular reel track does. It plays the alto sax, 2 tenors, and baritone sax, playing just this very simple part. And we have a few styles like that do just very basic rhythms like that. And that's exactly what I want for the first 4 bars of this song, but then I wanted to do something cooler and funkier starting at bar 5. So I want simple for the first 4 bars and then cool and funky starting at bar 5. So I'm going to switch to a real track that is a soul horn section with some really cool funky parts. And I'm going to use partial regeneration to do that. So I'll select this track, and I'll stay in the chord chart for this one, and I'll just highlight these 8 bars here. Now I'm going to do the Alt F8 again to bring up this dialog. Now normally when you use Control F8 or you use Alt F8 and go in here, it's just going to regenerate the part that is on that track. That's the main reel track. However, you can select an alternate reel track. So first of all, I'll press All so that it shows all options, and then I'll go Soul Horn section, and this is the one right here. So I'm going to pick that as my alternate for this track. Because I highlighted the region that's already entered here in the range to regenerate, I'll just go and make sure that we are overwriting because I don't want the existing part there. And now I'll go OK, regenerate. So very cool part. I'm going to start it from the beginning again, just so I can hear that sort of simplistic start there. And that might be what I would want, for example, if I had a guitar solo going over this. I wouldn't want something fancy like we have in bar 5 there if there was a guitar solo. So that's a very good use for this as well. So let me start here again. All right, and now I'm going to use this same part that we created here to show some other new features, and that's the copying, pasting, erasing, those types of functions here. So not regenerating new part, but just doing some editing to the file here. And one of the great things about these editing features in Band in a Box 2023 is that they do not force the writing of a new WAV file. In previous versions of Band in a Box, you could do these types of edits, but as soon as you make the edit, it writes the entire track to a WAV file that's then associated with the Band in a Box file. And a WAV file is, it's not a huge file, but it's a large file. Whereas now, all of that is just saved right in the Band in a Box file, and it retains its small file size. So that's a very significant thing with this new type of editing here. And I'm going to show you that right now. This here was the section where we created the cool sort of funky part, and the rest of it was the repeating rhythmic motif. So I want to have that repeating motif throughout, but I want to kind of accent it with a few little licks here and there. So for example here, there's a great lick here over a G chord. So that's a great little thing right there. So I'm just going to highlight that, and I'm not paying too close attention to the exact start points or end points. I just want to make sure I get the whole riff in there, and I'm going to just press copy. So now I'm going to go further on in the file and find an example of a G chord where I can paste that. So right here, for example, bar 10, chorus 2. So I'm going to highlight sort of a similar region from within there. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but something within bar 10 here. And now there are some options for pasting. There's regular paste. Paste merge would be like that thing we did with the prog rock guitars where we layered them on top of each other. I don't want to do that. Here are some other paste options. Multiple copies, if you want to just have it repeating. I don't want to do that either. But this option right here, paste relative to bar. So you remember when I copied it, I wasn't really paying attention to try and get it exactly at a bar line or anything like that, but it doesn't matter with this because it's going to paste it into this new bar, but it will retain the position, it will retain the relative position from that initial bar where I copied it. So I'm going to use that feature right now, paste relative. So there you go. It still actually has this little rhythmic part right here because I only copied this chunk here. So that is the riff now. So let me just play a little bit of what that sounds like. So yeah, that's cool now that it has the simple parts here, but I can make it throw in just sort of a little cool extra thing every once in a while, which is great. Now, I don't actually want this here in front of it. So I'm actually just going to erase that. So you can click erase, or you can just highlight the region and select delete. And that removes it. And again, doing those sorts of edits now does not require writing a WAV file. For those of you who are familiar with this type of editing in Band in a Box, in the past, this track here would have turned orange, which is the indicator for a WAV file that's associated with your Band in a Box file. So now that we have this type of new editing, the color stays green here, and the Band in a Box file size stays small. This is a good time to mention as well, in addition to this new features video, we also have a couple of Bootcamp videos where we take a deep dive into some of these new features. The partial regeneration is one of those that gets this full deep dive treatment in our Band in a Box 2023 Bootcamp 1 video. I'm going to play a little clip for you from that right now, and I'll probably play some clips from those two Bootcamp videos throughout this video as well. And you can find links to the full videos just by checking out the comments below. Let me try that right now. You know what? I'll do this full region here. And when I regenerate, it will play the bar before as well, which is great because it's a very important thing is that it's going to sound good, even if the solo itself sounds good in the region I selected. That doesn't necessarily mean it will necessarily fit with what came before. So I want to hear what comes before as well. So I'm just going to press Control F8 again. Feel so all alone. So last year with Band in a Box 2022, we introduced Playable RealTracks. This allowed you to use RealTracks, but you could switch between the RealTrack and MIDI notes that you could edit. But that MIDI would be using sounds that specifically went with those particular RealTracks. So you'd basically be combining the great RealTracks that we made with world-class musicians, along with the ability to enter specific notes yourself on the track. With Band in a Box 2023, we've done the same with RealDrums. We've added Playable RealDrums, as well as Playable MIDI and Playable MIDI SuperTracks, which we'll look at later. We basically now just call the feature Playable Tracks, since it encompasses all of these things. So right now we're listening to a new style that we made with drummer Mike Clark. He's probably most famous for being Herbie Hancock's drummer with his Headhunters band. So we did two sets with Mike Clark. The first is Funk Confusion, and then we did one that's straight ahead jazz but with a modern take on it, both with sticks and brushes. And this, what we're listening to right now, is an example of one of those. This is Jazz Waltz Modern Brushes that we made with Mike Clark. So I wanted to use this song file as an example of what you can do with Playable RealDrums. Now, I already added some Playable RealTracks earlier to this, At bar 8 here, the guitar was playing a really cool part, and I wanted to change the bass notes so that the bass would be kind of playing something specific along with it. So here's what the guitar is playing with the RealTracks. So then I went to the bass track, and there at bar 8, where the guitar was doing that, I added Playable RealTracks just for that bar. So these green notes here, those are the playable notes that I added. So everything else, these black notes here, are just the transcription for the bass, but they're not actually playing. You're hearing the real track, but then as soon as it gets to bar 8, you're hearing the playable notes. So let me just play now with the bass and the guitar together so you can hear what I did there. So there you go. And now what I was thinking is doing something similar with the drums. So let's first of all just see what the drums are doing for that part. I'll go to notation so we can kind of see it in here. And I'll go to the drums track and start playback here at bar 7. So the drums are already playing something really cool, and it already kind of goes with what was there on the bass and the guitar anyway. But nevertheless, I'm going to use this bar here as an example of me putting in a specific part that I have in mind for this. So I'm going to go to piano roll and I'll click playable track. Now that's going to load this Brushes Jazz Modern patch to the track so that any playable notes that I add will be using this specific Brushes Jazz Modern sound. And this sound is actually made up of sounds that we recorded from the kit that Mike Clark was actually playing, including brushes sounds and all of the cymbals and the kick and all of that. So I'll press OK here. So now here at bar 8 is where I wanted to kind of put in a specific fill. So I'll create a mute region. So that has added this up at the top here. If I start playback right now, it will just mute the drums for this part. So now I can actually add some notes there myself. So I'm going to go to notation for that, and I'll switch to editable notation. So here's the bar right here. So first of all, I'm just going to add brushes playing on the snare on the quarter notes. So let me play it from here now so we can hear just what that sounds like. I'm going to adjust the mute region just a tiny bit. So I'm going to go back. It's easier to adjust the mute region in the piano roll window. So I'm just going to move it a little bit further ahead here and hear what that sounds like. And I'm actually going to move these closer to the bar line. They're coming a little bit after the bar line, and it is sounding a little bit late to me. So there we go here. All right, back to notation here. So now what I was thinking is maybe I would add a kick on the third triplet of each of these. Let's hear what that sounds like. All right, so that's sounding pretty good. I'll go back again, and now on the second triplet of each of these, I was thinking maybe a hi-hat. So let me hear what that sounds like now. On second thought, actually, I think maybe an open hi-hat rather than a closed hi-hat. So I will change the drum note to open hi-hat. And I'll do the same for these. Now let's hear what it sounds like. All right, so that's sounding pretty good, although those open hi-hats that I just added seem a little bit loud. So I'm going to go back to the piano roll window. Now, in this window here, you can see these are all the notes, and then below each note in this area is a vertical line that represents the velocity for that note. And then when you look on this scale, you can see they're around 90, a velocity of 90 for all these notes that I entered. And the brushes sound fine like that, the kick sounds fine at that level, but those open hats just seem a little bit loud in context. So there are some cool new features in this window that make editing these velocities a little bit easier, particularly with drums. I could draw a line across the bottom here, for example, to reduce the velocity of everything. But I don't want to do that. I just want to reduce the velocity of those open hi-hat notes there. So I'll go undo. So I could do them each individually, lower this one, for example, like that, and do the same with the others, but I'll just undo that. But a much easier way now is if I highlight those particular notes, and you could do it this way, or you can also just click on that note on the piano to the left here, and that would highlight all open hi-hats throughout the entire file. You can see now just those notes are highlighted down below here. So now I could edit those together. And I could also do the same thing and draw the line across here. But with this new feature, if I do this, it only affects these notes that are highlighted, which is a really useful new feature. So now that I've done that, let's see how that sounds. So yeah, that sounds so much more realistic now, just making that small change because those hi-hats were too loud. Now it sounds almost indistinguishable going from the real drum part to this bar of MIDI notes and then back into the real drum part. So let me hear that again from here, and I'll switch to notation as well because then it looks good in notation. I'll switch to regular notation. So let me go back to like bar 5 and I'll play from here. Now in the Bootcamp videos that I mentioned earlier, the Bootcamp 1 video also has a little demonstration of some playable RealDrums where I used the playable RealDrums to just do a stop, and then I brought the RealDrums back in to do just the last part of a fill. So I'm going to show you that little clip right now from that Bootcamp video. And again, you can check out the whole video by just looking in the comments below. All right, so what I want to have happen here is I want to have the drum stop and then play a fill to get out. Now the fill that's being played there is actually quite nice. So I'm perfectly happy to leave that. So first of all, I'll enable the playable track. It will load a drum sound onto it. And now I'm going to create a mute region here. Now I want to have it go just up until this last triplet eighth note in beat 2. So it's just a short little thing where it's gonna mute just the first beat and 2/3 of the second beat there. So this is what it's like right now. So what I want to have happen then is I want to just have it play a crash right there, and a kick and a crash at the same time. Now I could change the velocities, but let me listen to it first there. See how this sounds. Okay, definitely too loud here. I'll just bring it all down. Way too quiet. Split the difference. And actually, now that I'm listening to it, I don't think that first eighth note in there is good. So just right here. That sounds a lot better. I like that a lot better now. Yeah, I didn't need to hear that, that hit that came before there. So bring the other instruments in now. And
Was leaving home. Whoa, 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 whoa. Down in the desert where I grew up. The ice won't last in your
we're now going to have a look at SynthMaster, which is now included with Band in a Box 2023. SynthMaster Player is an award-winning synth by KV331 Audio, which has thousands of presets that are especially useful for modern pop, EDM, and other similar genres. This file I have loaded, which is one of our new Songs with Vocals artist performances, is using 4 different instances of SynthMaster.
When I was low, lower than the canyon floor.
Another really cool thing about SynthMaster is that there are a lot of arpeggiator sounds. And I'm going to play a clip now from the Bootcamp 2 video where I explore SynthMaster and use another great new feature, chord tracks. Also loads the SynthMaster plugin. I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. First of all, I'm just going to generate some basic block chords on this track, Utility 2, using a new feature. So I'll right click and I'll go to Edit MIDI and I'll select Generate Chord Track on this track. So that brings up this dialog, which gives us some options before it creates this new MIDI part. So channel, I'll just leave it at channel 1. The plugin here isn't really channel specific, so that's perfectly fine to just leave it like that. 90 is a relatively neutral velocity, so I'll leave it at 90. If you want it particularly quiet, you can put a low value. If you want it particularly loud, you can put a higher value. Now here, the note range to output. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to be writing a basic chord track, but those chords can be low chords or they can be high chords. So 60 is middle C. And it shows you that's the little guide there here, middle C equals 60. So this is going to be going from middle C to the C above middle C. So it's going to generate chords, but all of the notes will conform to that range right there. So for chord types, there are a couple of options here. The first is triads or sevenths only. So for example, if I selected that, this F minor 9, it would probably just play an F minor or F minor 7. But it wouldn't play the extension with the 9th up there. Same with this B2 chord here. So, and then the other option is complex chords, which will pretty much play what you've entered in here right now. So I'll pick the first one for now, but I'll show you the other one later. So then number of ticks before chord change to output. So as I said, it's going to just write block chords for all of these chords right where the chord is entered. But if you put a value in here, it's going to write them a little bit early. Now you might want this if it's like pads or something like that that you're using with a very slow attack. That way they start a little bit earlier so it has a chance to swell. And then musically that might make a little more sense and might sound more natural. I'm just going to leave this at 0 though, which means it's going to write all of these exactly on the downbeat. And you have an option to write chords during the lead-in, but I'll leave that off. So I'm just going to write the chords now. So now I'll go to the piano roll and we'll have a look at some of these chords. So for example, the A minor chord there, it's playing an A and an E and a C, all between middle C and the C above middle C. The F major 7 chord, it's playing C, E, F, and A. You skip ahead a few chords here. The F minor 9 chord, it's playing C, E flat, so the 7th. So it is including the 7th there. And then F, and then A flat, but it's not including G, which would be the 9th of the chord. So again, that's just because of the setting we chose, but I could change that if I wanted to actually get the G in examples like this. Same with this B2 chord. It's playing a B, a D sharp, and an F sharp, but not a C sharp, which would be the 2 of that chord. So right now we just have the chords here, but we haven't actually picked a SynthMaster sound yet. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to Select MIDI Instrument Patch, and I'm going to go to Select High Q MIDI Patch Plugin. So this dialog here shows all of our old high Q sounds. It also shows all the playable RealDrums and the playable RealTracks, and then it also has the SynthMaster sounds. So just like before, I am just going to filter this by SynthMaster. And also, like in those other dialogues, by the time this video goes live, there will likely be some more presets in here as well. And again, like those other dialogues, you can just double-click on some of these to sample what they sound like. So it plays the solo instrument first, but then plays it with that instrument in the context of a full band. So now I've picked one here, and you'll notice that it has AR and also has ARP in the name. So the sounds that have ARP in them, like these other ones as well, they use arpeggiator features within the plugin. So I'm actually going to pick this one here, AR Melodic Wave ARP, and try that over these chords that we've entered. So you'll see, even though all that got entered here is just a block chord that just lasts for 2 whole bars, the plugin itself, when it receives that information, also receives the tempo information from the song, and is therefore able to play arpeggios rather than just playing a block chord. So I'm going to open up the plugin so we can see this as well, because it shows you in here the notes that it's actually playing on the keyboard here. So even though Band in a Box is feeding it just these block chords, we'll see on here the arpeggios that are being played. So that's a really neat part there. But I'm finding it kind of a little sort of in your face right now. And I think that's partly to do with the range. I think maybe if these notes are lower, that it might blend a little more in the background and still be really cool, but not be so present. So I'm going to go back into that same feature. So for starters, I'm going to allow complex chords this time. And now I'm going to change the note range. So we had it starting at middle C. If I subtract 12 from that, it's basically going down an octave. Now before I had a range of a full octave, 60 to 72. But you don't need to put that in. In this case, I'm actually going to make it shorter than an octave. I'm going to make it 48 to 55. So what that means is basically it's going from C, an octave below middle C, but then only up to G. So what that means is that for any chords that are generated, any A flat, A, B flat, or B will simply not be used. So the upshot of that basically is that all of the chords that get written, there might be some that are triads, but a lot of them might end up being 2-note voicings, and that's kind of what I want, I think, for this one. At least I'll try it out and we'll see how it sounds. So that's what I'm going to write the chords to right now. Now for starters too, you can see that over this B2 chord, it has now put a C sharp because I now am allowing for more complex chords. But let me just press play and we'll listen from the beginning now here and see what it sounds like at that lower register and also with a more constricted range. So you can see, I found that quite effective myself. And you can see that, for example, the A minor chord doesn't have an A in it because that was outside of the range. But it still sounded really cool then to just go to this two-note voicing for the A minor. This more complex chord then ended up having more notes, but it was still very effective. And I like that narrow range, and I think I really liked it in the lower register like that. Let me play a little bit more. But I think, like with the last one I used, this isn't quite the range that I want. I think I want to maybe not go down a full octave, but just lower some of the notes. So I'm going to use another different new feature, again in the Edit MIDI track, and I'll go to Adjust Octave of Notes to Fit Note Range. This is going to basically do the same thing as I did previously with regenerating the chord track, but I wanted to demonstrate this because this can be used to adjust the range of any MIDI, not just newly generated chord tracks. So this dialog kind of has two parts. First of all, I'm going to enter a number that will be the lower portion of the range. So in this case, I wanted it down a bit, but not a full octave. So I'm going to have the lowest notes be, say, 55. And I'll hit enter. And then it's already filled in an octave above 66. So you can see that has now lowered some of the notes. There are still notes above middle C, as expected, but now the notes that were above a certain range have been lowered down to below middle C. So let me play from the top again and listen how that now sounds now that we've made that change. All right, I'm back now at the same song that I was looking at before I switched to that clip there. This song, As If I Could Get Away. And I wanted to use this to demonstrate more of the Playable Tracks feature. Earlier in the video, I showed Playable RealTracks and Playable RealDrums, and I also mentioned at that time that you could also use the same feature with MIDI tracks or MIDI SuperTracks. So I'm going to do that with this bass part right now. So let's have a look at this in the piano roll here. I'll play a little bit of it.
My mind.
So this is a cool, funky bass part here, and it's using this great BA jazz bass SynthMaster sound. But I think I want to have some specific things happen in the bass part coming up here at bars 25 and 26. So let me just play a little bit of what it's got right now. So for those two bars, I was thinking rather than keep that same syncopated groove, I would put a simpler part in just for those two bars there. So I'll turn on Playable Track. Now, unlike the Playable RealTracks and the Playable RealDrums, it didn't need to load a specific MIDI sound because it already had a MIDI sound loaded, this SynthMaster player sound. But because I added that, I can now access this feature again where I create a mute region, and I'll go over these full two bars. So if I play now, the notes that are under there will disappear, like they did before with the drums. So now I'm just going to add my own notes here. So starting with A, since it's an A chord, and I'll actually snap to quarter notes, and I think I want the duration of these to be a quarter note. So start there, and I'll do basically an arpeggio up. So C sharp and then E. And then up to A here. And then down to F sharp. C sharp, A, and F sharp. And then here I'll let it just go back to the usual. And then here I'll just let it go back to the funky part that it was playing beforehand. So starting here again.
Away from you, I thought I could get away from you.
And then I think I'll do exactly the same thing here again. I don't need to silence those. I will create a mute region here as well. I'll go to there. Those notes will disappear when I start playback. And then I'll just go back here and I will copy all of these and paste them right here at bar 29.
Away from you, as if I could get away from you.
Now I'm going to use this same file to check out another new feature, Master Volume Automation. With Band in a Box 2022, we introduced volume automation on a track-by-track basis. So for example, this is the lead vocal part here, and I used a little bit of volume automation just to bring the vocals down a little bit in some parts where they were a little bit louder than other parts. So that was something that was introduced last year, but now we have this master track where you can also add volume automation, but this one affects all other instruments. So it's useful for things like crescendos or fade outs, that kind of thing. And I'm going to show you an example of both of those things right now. So there's some vocals here that go up to bar 33, and then there's just an instrumental break for 4 bars, and then the vocals come back in. So I'll play a little bit of that.
As if I could get away from you.
So I want to have those 4 bars swell a little bit. I want to have all of the instruments come up to just give that instrumental break a little bit extra. So rather than do it on every single track, I'm just going to go to the master, and at 33 I will go up. Maybe I'll try just 3 decibels. And this one I'll just put back to 0. And then at bar 37, I'll add another node there. And then here I will also go back to 0. Just even that out a little bit. And then I'll start playback from here and we'll hear that.
Get away from you.
And now we'll demonstrate a fade out. So starting at bar 89 here, I'll put a new node in there just as an anchor point. And then I want it to have faded out by bar 94. So I'll do that. And let's check that out now.
As if I could get away from you.
The next thing we're going to look at is another really exciting new feature, RealTracks Stems. In the Bootcamp 1 video, I used RealTracks Stems to add a 3-part vocal ensemble to a modern country song. So I'm going to play a clip of that video right now, And then when I return here, I'll show you another example of RealTracks Stems. All right, so there's another new feature that I'd like to take advantage here as well, that I think will be a lot of fun. Now, we had these backing vocals earlier on, and they were very nice. And it's more or less the same backing vocals then coming in here. So I want to choir this thing up and and make it a little more, give it a little more oomph in the vocal department. So I am going to go to the RealTracks picker here, and there are a bunch of vocals like oohs and ahs and doo-wop and all that kind of stuff that we have in the RealTracks picker. And there is one, I'm going to search for, I've already searched for shuffle. I'm going to search for shuffle vocal. Yeah, so we got this gospel shuffle here. So if I select this one, vocal background gospel shuffle, which is the ensemble, we see all of these checkboxes appear below here. Now this is a new feature called RealTracks Stems. Last year we added RealDrum Stems, which is similar idea, but quite different, because the RealDrums were basically you can get access to, for any drum performance, you get access to all of the mics that we're using to mic it, which is great for like exporting and then doing your own mix. That kind of thing is perfect for that. But with these ensembles, it's a similar idea, but you're getting isolated parts for these, because like this vocal ensemble, for example, they were recorded as separate little units, isolated. So you're getting all of those, so you then have like complete control over the mix. So you can see what we have here. This is a 3-part gospel shuffle, but you'll notice there's a lot more than 3 parts here. That's because there are some options here. The first 3 options are soprano, and you can see it says vocal soprano, just SOP, but soprano double. And the double means that this is actually a mix of 2 voices singing in unison. Same with this one, alto, the higher alto voice doubled. So that's 2 voices, 4 voices, and then the lower alto voice doubled as well. So this is basically 6 voices. Now all of these other ones are exactly the same as those, but you can select them and have even more separation. So you then have those 6 there as well. But I'm just going to use these 3. And let me make sure I'm putting them in the right place. I'm putting them on utility 5 here. So it's going to put them on tracks 5, 6, and 7. Now, those individual parts here, I should just point out, those were available previously. Like this is a real track that we released some time ago. And those individual voices were available back then to use as individual voices. But if you put them together, they were all just creating their own separate parts. So they were not a coherent ensemble type thing. Now, these all will be generated together, so the parts will blend together, like they'll be the actual parts that go together, which is something that we have not had in the past. So that's a very exciting new feature as well. So I'm going to generate track there. So I just want to have them come in at 89. So again, we could do the delete thing or just use the volume automation. I'll just use volume automation. So 89 is where I want them to come in. And so I'll do them one at a time here. You know what? I'll see what it sounds like for them to come in in the bar before that. That probably actually would be nice. And you can see as I go from track to track, they all kind of are mirrored there because they're all, again, part of the same ensemble. And this one here, 89. All right, so let's hear what it sounds like when they come in.
From the glare of those blinding city lights. And yes, I've been to the city where the nights are greeny and the L train shakes your bones. It's so dang loud on and the sirens are wailing like somatic saxophones. So much there, but it can't compare to a peaceful.
So here's another example of RealTracks Stems, and this is a file that you can open yourself just to check out how these work. So the file would be in your main Band in a Box directory under Documentation, Tutorials, Tutorial BB 2023. And then it's this file here, RealTracks Stems, Crooner Jazz Horn Section Stems. So I'll open that right now. All right, so in the previous clip, I showed you how you can add these RealTracks stems, but this particular file here just has them already loaded right in the file, so it's ready to go just by pressing play. So let's check this out. So this is a particularly cool ensemble here in that it's a few different groups of instruments trading off with one another. Like you have the trumpet ensemble here, will play for a bit, then they'll be silent and you'll have the saxes play for a little bit. I'm just going to highlight that right now by looping maybe 4 bars, starting at bar 6 and going all the way to bar 9 here. Then I'll just loop those, and then I'll solo some of these instruments so we can kind of hear what's happening in all of them. So I'll go L4, meaning loop 4 bars. So I'll hit OK. So there we had the trumpets just in that bar, and now they're silent for bars 7 and 8, and they come back at bar 9. And there they are. But then the saxes are the reverse. So the saxes and the trumpets are all actually in at bar 9 there. So as an educational tool, this is great as well because it really lets you delve into these parts and see what's happening in the different little groups. Another new feature is that you now have more control over RealDrum's fills. Now normally, the RealDrums would always play a fill at the last bar of a section before a part marker has been entered in. So you could hear that's what happened there. A fill was played at bar 8, and then there was a crash played at bar 9. Another fill will come up here at bar 16. So you now have the option both to add fills in bars that wouldn't normally have a fill, or remove fills from bars where there is a fill. So I'm going to demonstrate the first of those. I am going to put a fill at every single bar here for these last 4 bars. So we'll get this kind of crazy drum thing happening for 4 full bars rather than just a fill at the end here. So I'll right click on the bar. I'll say drum fill wanted, drum fill wanted, drum fill wanted, and then I'll leave this one because it will already be playing a drum fill. So I'll start here. So there you go. It was almost as if there was a drum solo here for those last 4 bars because we got all of those crazy fills all in a row. Another new feature is that if you load a song file that requires a certain style and you don't have that style, Band-in-a-Box will now give you extra help in trying to find a replacement style that you can use instead. So to demonstrate this, I removed the style Zoom, and I'm going to load the demo for Zoom that's going to try and load that style, but it won't be able to find it. So now it gives me this message here, which says, do you want to browse and choose from similar styles that you do have? So I will select yes. So that opens the StylePicker and automatically puts these filters in: medium rock, 4/4, even 16, 130. So this style here that says NA, because I temporarily removed it, is the style that the song was trying to load. And another feature for those NA styles is that they now display information such as genre, groove, etc. that didn't display previously, and you can double click to hear a demo even if you don't have the style. But all of these other styles here would be good matches as well. So for example, I could pick this one instead. So I'll press OK, and I'll play that. So I have put that zoom style back in now, and so now I have to rebuild the StylePicker so that it can find it again. So there's a new feature with rebuild as well. I'll press this button, and it gives me this dialog here. This now gives you the option to pick different folders for your RealTracks, your RealDrums, or both. So this means if you've installed Band in a Box on your computer, for example, but the RealTracks and RealDrums, you're just using them on an external drive to save space on your own computer, you can now enter those custom locations right here when you rebuild the StylePicker. Previously, you would have to go to two different windows, one for the RealTracks and one for the RealDrums, enter those locations there, and then come back to the StylePicker to rebuild. But that's now all in this one handy place. And for those locations that you've selected, for example, I have it currently just looking in CBB RealTracks and CBB Drums, it also shows you the current number of RealTracks and RealDrums found in each of those locations. So for example, there's 3,716 RealTracks found and 3,883 RealDrums found. One thing to note is that these numbers are likely a little bit bigger than you would see on a full UltraPack install, because I have a lot of duplicate folders with new names that I was using during the development process. But I do think that a number in the 3000s is correct for an Ultra install for both the RealTracks and the RealDrums. So if you looked at this dialog and it was a small number or a 0, that would be an indication that you should probably be using a different folder location for those. So I'll press OK, rebuild, and there is also now a progress bar at the top. There are new features in the RealTracks Picker and the RealDrums Picker. In the RealTracks Picker, there's a new column for stems. We had a look at the RealTracks stems earlier in the video, and so you can see right in the RealTracks Picker how many stems are available for any given RealTrack. So a lot of them will be 0, but for the ones that do have stems that are ensemble things like horn sections or vocals, it shows you the number of stems associated with them. So this vocal doo-wop pop 8ths, for example, has 12 stems. This crooner bossa has 10 stems, etc. Related to that as well is a filter that allows you to filter to see styles that have stems available. And a new filter like that has also been added to the RealDrums Picker for RealDrum stems. Another cool new feature is that you can now right-click on RealTracks within this list, and it opens this handy menu with several options. One of the items in here that I'm particularly excited about is this one to launch the StylePicker showing styles with the selected RealTrack. So before I select that, I'll just show you here. In the past, if I had this RealTrack selected, I could go to this button here to load styles associated with that RealTrack, or this button to load song demos associated with that RealTrack. However, these buttons here don't really give me any information about the specific styles, like what other instruments are in there, and it also doesn't give me a chance to listen to demos of it. But if I right-click here and select Launch StylePicker showing styles with the selected RealTrack, that closes the RealTracks Picker and now opens the StylePicker and automatically puts this filter in to show styles that use that guitar. So that has been done automatically for me, and I now see all of those styles before, but I can now click on them to hear samples of them. Another cool thing you can do with this right-click menu is that you can toggle between a reel track being in your favorites list or not. So if I select this for this reel track, we can see there's now a star beside it, and I'll do that for a couple others. And now I'll go to this Faves button here. And now at the top of this list here are those ones that I actually added as favorite reel tracks. So these would be ones that I would want to use a lot, that I would specifically say those are some of my favorites. And then also in this list here are ones that I've recently used. So this is also a very handy dialog to use as well. And as I mentioned, that right-click option is also available in the RealDrums picker, with lots of options here as well, including the same toggle favorite. And then I can choose from favorites and see those ones I selected up here, and then just other RealDrums that I've picked recently. Another great new feature is that Band in a Box now auto-saves whatever song you happen to be working on. That means if you're working on a song and, say for example, your computer crashes and restarts, you won't have lost the work that you've been doing up to that point. So I'm going to demonstrate right now. So if you're working on a song that has at some point been saved, the autosave file will save in that same location. If you're working on a brand new file and you haven't saved it anywhere, it will save it to a default location. So right now I haven't saved this song at all, and I'm just working on a song here, so I'll enter a few chords, and G, and then back to C here. So now I'm going to use Windows Task Manager to force quit Band in a Box, just to emulate what would happen if my computer crashed and restarted right now. So I'm ending task, and now I will start Band in a Box up again. So it prompts me to load that auto-saved song, so I'll select yes. And there we go. The chords that I entered are here. And we can see up at the top, this is the location where it's saved. C, B, B, autosave. And like I said, if I was working on a song that at one point I had saved, the autosaved song would be in that location. There are also enhancements to the Copy Songs to Text on Clipboard or Files feature. There are new options to use tab instead of vertical lines for bar lines. This is useful if you want to paste the chord chart into, for example, a spreadsheet. There's also an option to use / for empty beats and bar numbers on each bar. So with those selected now, I can copy to clipboard, and I can open a spreadsheet and paste them in. So if I scroll down to where the chords are entered here, we can see, for starters, there's bar numbers there. There's slashes for any empty beats, and they're separated by tabs, so each bar is in its own cell in the spreadsheet. There are enhancements to the SongPicker dialog. The SongPicker auto-rebuilds for folders if there are less than a specified number of songs. This means that the SongPicker will show all songs, including new ones, without needing to rebuild. You can set this with the new option in the SongPicker Options dialog. There are new display options and enhancements, including the notification messages that appear at the bottom right of screen, which are now smaller, occupying less of the screen, and they also just look better. And you can edit the flash message colors in the display options. You can choose to hide the red lines in bars on the chord sheet, which show up if there are bar settings for that bar. For Nashville notation, if your song key is a minor key, the 1 minor chord now by default shows correctly as 1 minor, rather than 6 minor, which is what the chord would be in the relative major. And of course, all other chords now correctly show in relation to the minor key 2 rather than the relative major. This can be changed in display settings if you prefer it the other way. An option has been added in the Generate Intros dialog to incorporate the chords in any section of your song to use for the intro. For example, you can use the last 4 bars of the song as an intro. Many new items have been added to the track's right-click menu options, and I'm going to show you a clip from the Bootcamp 1 video to show this in action. So I'm going to pick this style, And that style has now been loaded to this song. Now, you remember in the StylePicker there, I said that utility track 1 was one of the ones that this style uses, but there was already an audio track on it, that the background vocals that I mentioned earlier. Now, obviously, we don't want the style to remove those, because then we'd be losing one of our vocal tracks. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this now to a different track, like move it to utility track 4, so that then we'll get that guitar that's part of the style on utility track 1. So another new feature is that there are new right-click items right in the mixer. So I'm going to right-click on this, utility track 1, and I'm going to go to track actions and copy move tracks. This has been added to this menu here, which is very useful. All right, so the source is utility track 1. I want it to go onto utility track 4, and I don't want to copy, I want to actually move it. And there we go, it's moved to there, which opened up this slot for the guitar that's part of the style. The What Add-ons Do I Have dialog now lists the percentage of RealTracks, RealDrums, styles, and add-on styles with links to pgmusic.com with more information. So the last feature I'm going to show you is the new live audio input monitoring feature. So once again, I'm going to show you a clip from the Bootcamp 2 video to show you this new feature in action. All right, now I think the last thing I want to do with this track here that I've made is add my own little part to it. So I've got my guitar plugged into my audio interface here, and I was thinking of playing just a really simple little part that would go from the A minor chord to the F major 7, and the same little thing to go from the A minor to the F minor 7. Now, you have been able to record audio in the past, but now new features have been added so that you're able to monitor the input along with the effects that you have on that track that you're recording to. So I'll show you that right now. I'll bring in another track here, utility 8, and actually I'm going to bring in another one, utility 9 as well. Now on utility 8, I'm going to add a tremolo because I want to do a part that's got a cool little tremolo part, just a really simple line here. So if I right click on the VU meter here, we can see there are some new options. Arm track, and I'll get to that in a moment, but then there's these options, stereo to stereo, or mono left to stereo, or mono right to stereo. Now, my audio interface has 2 inputs, so basically those 2 inputs are left and right. So my left one I'm using for this microphone that I'm talking through right now, and the right one, my guitar is plugged into it. So if I select mono right to stereo, that means my guitar will be going to this track. So I'll leave that there, and I will arm the track. You can see now the VU meter has turned blue here. So I'll just play a few notes on the guitar. So you were hearing that now, you were seeing it in the VU meter here, and you were hearing it with these effects that I put onto that track. So if I put a different effect, for example, on utility 9, and I put distortion, for example, if I arm this track instead, we're now hearing the distortion there. So, but I will arm this track here. Another thing I wanted to show as well is that these VU meters now show in stereo, and I can actually highlight that really well with this one here. If I go stereo to stereo, basically then, as I pointed out, my microphone is coming through the left channel and the guitar is through the right. So if I go stereo to stereo, now you're hearing my voice on the left side with this tremolo here added to it. And you can see that just the left side, just the top part of the VU meter is showing. That's because my voice is now going through that side. And if I play some guitar as well, there you can see my voice is on the top, the guitar is on the bottom. Because my voice is left, the guitar is right. So I'll switch this back to just the guitar, and I'll show you then on the drums track here, if I start playback and I move the pan from left to right, you'll see this switching from the line being longer on the top when I pan to the left, then the line being longer on the bottom when I pan to the right. So that's another really cool new feature as well, that you now have a better visual representation of what you're actually hearing. So that being said, I have this tremolo loaded here. I have a simple little part that I had in mind to add to this. So I am now going to actually record that on there. I hope you enjoyed checking out all the great new features in Band in a Box 2023. Thanks for watching and have fun.